Thanks, Richard. So as you saw, we were able to very quickly demonstrate the integration with Metastorm, how easy that integration was. You, as Richard was just explaining, got a good feel for what it takes to build a new dashboard literally from the ground up from multiple independent data sources. If there are any questions at this time, we'd like to open it up. There are two different ways that you can actually ask a question. If you open up your interface for GoToWebinar, which you see on the right-hand side of your screen, you should see a couple of different options there. The first is to raise your hand. There's a function there called Raise Hand, and if you do that, what will happen is I'll unmute you, and you can ask your question directly over the air here, and then we'll do our best to answer it. The other way to do it is to just type in your question in the question field that you see in that interface. And we've actually had a couple questions come in, so as we're waiting for additional questions, why don't we kick it off with these questions that have come in as Richard has been speaking here. The first question is, how is reporting on a process different from regular BI? And I guess I'll take a crack at that, Richard, and then I'll ask you to maybe elaborate a little bit just in terms of some of the details. The fundamental problem with process reporting or process analysis versus traditional business intelligence is that traditional BI technologies, and by extension, of course, that includes any dashboard solution that's out there, they really aren't designed with process in mind. They analyze data as a static series of records, but don't understand the key thing about process, which is order and timing. In other words, what's the sequence of business activities as they happen in a process context? So as a result, if you're using a traditional BI solution, monitoring, analyzing, optimizing process performance generally is going to require custom development, custom SQL, and very complex logic. Altosoft basically solves this problem by embedding this engine that I talked about, this business process intelligence engine, which is a state engine that tracks and analyzes any process. It's different from the type of process engine that exists in a solution like Metastorm. It's not an execution engine. It's just a tracker, if you will. And basically what that enables organizations to do is measure their operational process performance and their process quality and understand how long it's taking between steps in a process, how long it's taking to complete processes in their entirety, which processes are the least error-prone, what happens if particular processes are encountering conditions such as looping and things like that are exceptions, basically. So it gives you a lot of functionality to do things without requiring any code, of course, that traditional business intelligence doesn't really handle. And of course, the other advantage here is we're applying this functionality across any business system. It's not limited to Metastorm. Of course, we can use this with Metastorm. Metastorm has that context of process built into it, but other systems don't understand process that well, and we can basically use this technology to monitor processes that are happening across those systems holistically. So it's a capability for process-centric organizations that really adds some extra power to the way that you analyze your business. And Richard, maybe you could just elaborate quickly on the setup that's involved here, and just talk quickly about how it actually works from a design perspective.
Sure. The setup of our processes is very simple, and it really makes an important point, which is that typically, if you're going to be executing a process, such as a BPM tool would be, then the process that you model has to have a lot of detail. You need to include all of the exception conditions, all the transactionality, and how you're going to back out of various things. Whereas in our case, we're not doing that. We're not executing a process. We're monitoring it. So we have the luxury of saying, don't give me all the process details. Just tell me the maybe half dozen key steps that you care about within a process in order to be able to generate these process metrics, and ignore the other steps, because since we're not executing it, we don't need those other steps. So setting it up in our instance is simply a matter of defining events such as the ones that we did in this demonstration here, and importantly, they don't all have to come from one system. These events can be scattered from various back-end systems around your organizations. You define the events, you say which events are a part of the process and which events are the start and end events, and that's really all the information we need to be able to define a process KPI, a process metric. We give you a graphical tool similar to what you've seen that allows you to say, well, I want to highlight all of the processes that start at this node and end at that node, and pass through this step, but don't pass through this other step, and for that set of sub-processes, I want to generate, well, how long did they take, or how many of them were there, or what was the total revenue associated with them, so that it's minimal detail, just the detail needed to point to the key steps within a process that we can use to then generate these metrics.
Thanks, Richard. A couple more questions coming in here. First question is, does Altosoft integrate with the Metastorm workflow? Would I be able to open a Metastorm form from the dashboard itself? And maybe I'll take a quick crack at that one. The answer is basically yes. You can actually drill down. You saw here within the demonstration, Richard drilling down to an event level detail. What you can actually do there is embed a link to Metastorm, so you can actually then address the Metastorm system and open up Metastorm from this dashboard. Richard, can you elaborate on that at all, or does that pretty much answer it, do you think?
I mean, the other thing I'll add is that I was working with some Metastorm folks recently, and they did exactly that. They set it up that you can drill down into whatever Metastorm page they want from within our environment. But there's a very easy way of doing it. We already pointed out that this all works in SharePoint. So you can always take any one of our display components and drop it into a SharePoint dashboard. Take the Metastorm components with all their functionality on that same SharePoint dashboard and mix them and match them in any way you like.
And it looks like we have a related question here. Can we integrate with Metastorm workflow, meaning create a dashboard that will show users their to-do lists and watch lists and enable them to act on the e-forms in their to-do lists?
Yes, in
Richard,
the same way that I just said, that you can use their web parts that bring up things like your to-do list, and at the same time also include our components that are showing different types of information. So yes, definitely.
Okay. And just to elaborate on that, I think you can certainly do that within SharePoint. You can also embed an iframe within this dashboard directly, and presumably that could encompass Metastorm. So a couple different ways to accomplish that. One more question here for you, Richard. Is there a way to export the definitions? For example, what table information from what table and what databases did the information come from, used for documenting all information, and how it was used?
Yes, you certainly can. There are various ways. You can always export the data from the standpoint of wanting to save the data, but you can always at any point go into our Generate Documentation option, and this will then create a document which will show me all that you just asked for. So it'll show me what are the different data sources and connections that I've established, what are the events, and what data am I pulling from each of these data sources, and also what are the metrics that I've defined. And again, you'll see them with this graphical representation showing all of the details, so that you get, not only do you get auto-generated documentation, but it's in a format that means that you don't have to be a programmer to have some understanding of what's actually going on under the covers here.
And just to add to that, of course, you can also open up your instance of either SQL Server or Oracle that you're using for your Smart Mart that you're creating as part of this process, and you can actually look at the tables and the fields that we're generating automatically. So you can look at your data there directly, and actually you can use it for other purposes. For example, if you are using some other type of dashboard technology, certainly that particular Smart Mart is queryable from that. It's completely open format. One more question here, looks like. How quickly can I get up and running? I'll answer that one. I think the answer really depends on the scope of your projects. Typically it takes a couple hours to start building dashboards using data from Metastorm or really from any other system. We have the opportunity that we offer to test the whole process out with something we call the one-day proof of concept. Basically what that's all about is we can come into your environment, we'll go through the install process, work with you to get a good understanding of the product, help you build out a few dashboards, typically over the course of a day, sometimes 2 days, and then we leave the software behind and you can continue to work with it. And a lot of our customers find that's a good way to kind of get a jump start on working with Altosoft and understanding how easy it is to use the solutions, as well as just get a great feel for the products working directly with us. It's almost like a free one-day training session. And I think that looks like it for the questions. If anybody does have any additional questions, please feel free to contact me directly. I think my email address is available to you, but just to repeat it here quickly, it's kspurway, S-P-U-R-W-A-Y, @altosoft.com. You can also contact your Altosoft account representative directly. They'll answer any additional questions that you have. Thank you all for joining us here today. I appreciate that, and we look forward to working with you. Thanks very much.